So that's the strangest version of this song I've ever heard, but thanks for finding that. That's super cool. So today I'm speaking about team first, but before we start, let's start here. So, as a kid, I was always fat. And about 10 years ago, I lost a whole bunch of weight. And then I moved to Paris, and I ate all the good stuff. And life happened, and then I got a little bit fat again. So what I know is if I want to lose any weight, I have to do that publicly. So I built this. I will not put that on long because this is not my talk, but in 10 seconds, when I step on my scale, which is Wi-Fi connected, I use Azure Lambda functions and Netlify to update my app that then shows how much I weigh, and then it tweets. So every time I step on the scale in the morning, thank you. It's pretty scary because Netlify retweeted my tweet, frontendlove, and Vuejs Amsterdam, and then this happened. My goal was shit because I could never make that. So basically, I went halfway, so I lost 5.5 rather than whatever I wanted. And actually, that's way more healthy. So in 2.5 months, I lost this, so I guess I'm okay, but it would have been nice if I made it, right? But anyways, so I just wanted to mention that because it had a bit of traction on Twitter, and it's just fun for me. So let's talk about team first. Oh, I have a mouse pointer here. I don't need that. So team first is a framework to lead a team to success in a high-pressure environment. And yes, this is not about Vue.js. I know you're here for Vue.js. You had a whole bunch today, but actually, well, let's first show you this. Mandatory. But why do I actually want to talk about this? While it's not technical, it's not Vue.js. Actually, to produce high-quality technology, you have this in this high-pressure environment that is completely dependent on having a proper organization, right? And now it kind of fits again, because most of you, I guess, work at like a studio or an ad agency or stuff like that, and you will always have a whole bunch of complicated projects, and there's so much stuff happening with process and all of, like I'll outline what kind of problems you can have. And once you fix those, you can actually start properly coding. So let's talk about me. My name is Tim Benniks, and they're kind of big claims that I'm making on the stage, so I wanted to show you who I am and why I think I might be able to say this. So I work at Valtech. We are also a sponsor today. And I also work with Cloudinary, who's also a sponsor. So I'm super lucky that this is happening. So I've had the privilege to work with all these kind of fancy fashion brands and games. And so I did this for many, many years, and they all have different processes. They are huge companies that either have really high process, like e-commerce platforms, or for EA Games, we have FIFA 2020. You need to work for 3 months without sleep. There's all these different things that happen, right? So, now let's hope that the sound works. I'm going to show you a video and listen to what the narrator is saying and see if you can apply that to your current project. This is made for this screen. Look.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no one has gone before.
This is basically my daily life with my clients, right? It's insane. And also, it's really hard to find this video in a proper HD format to show it here. It's also a 4:3. I managed, so that's cool. So actually, it's this, Star Trek, the original project teams. And this should actually be the cover, I think. And as you'll see throughout the presentation, you'll see that I found the worst pictures I could find. Turns out they're the only pictures of this show. They're all insanely bad, but it's so iconic. I love it. So I hope not, like, Some will know this, some are too young, but just go with it. So, a lot of projects have the following challenges. So, the expectations of your product owner or your client, or a potentially immature client, or a very mature client that doesn't really know what they want, or they know so much what they want that you don't have any freedom anymore. Perceived pressure from your client or your own management, and note perceived here because it's probably not there, they just don't know what you're doing as a developer. Then, different ways to measure quality. Is no bugs high quality, or is it because it's fast high quality, or because it looks pixel perfect? Developers already amongst you will have different ideas about that. Also, a perceived degree of autonomy or giving value. If you're in this huge enterprise system and you cannot actually make any changes, you might actually be able to, but you just don't know that you can. And potential cultural difference. This is actually a pretty big one, but we'll go into that a bit later. And this is how you feel with all those. So basically, all those issues make people very unhappy, and your output will be quite low quality. And I know for sure that even with those problems, you guys still do great work. But imagine if you didn't have them, how much better your work would be. So this isn't always true. Before writing a single line of code, you have to fix them, but you have to at least start to fix them. So the team overcomes the challenges. It's not just its leader. Oh, this is a leader. I found all these backstage things from him. Amazing. Okay, so I'm a developer, so I make frameworks, right? So Team First is a framework that has behavioral rules to make you successful in a high pressure environment. So what you should know is I've worked in agencies with these kind of clients I just showed you for about 15 years. So all of it is anecdotal. They're all stories. They're my experience. It doesn't mean that it works for you, but take from it what works for you. So let's go to the split. This is actually not something I composed together. This is to be found on the web. So people did this. So the split, but what I mean is because it's a framework, I put it in 3 pieces. So we have the leader, in this case the Borg leader. We have as a developer and as a team. So I made a set of behavioral rules for all those 3 categories. And then if you follow those, or try to at least, you will see that it can have a positive impact. So there's clearly an overlap here, and this is a really important one. Leaders can also be developers. I'm a director of something, and I code all the time. I help out. And then you have this junior girl or guy who does an amazing job and suddenly becomes the leader of their own part. So there's always overlap. This is super important to know. And of course, interpret all these rules how you see fit. This is a backstage shot, and they couldn't get the shot because she's laughing, because look how bad his outfit is. So let's go and talk about as a leader. So the most important part of leaders is to actually make the team feel responsible. Because if you are responsible, you will make sure that what you did is looking great in front of a client or wherever. This is your little piece of work, right? So how do we get people to feel responsible in a team? Not like this. Basically, this is very big words, but we'll go into them. So provide trust, give people overview, and make sure that you can grow as a developer. So let's start about trust. So you have to trust your team. This needs to be the root of your culture. And of course, trust is gained over time, but this needs to happen. So really give people the freedom to actually act responsibly. Really don't go micromanaging. Like right now, I'm in this conference, I'm here for a week. I don't really know what my team is doing. I just know that they're fixing their stuff. I know they're fixing bugs or doing things. I don't care because they are responsible. And let people manage their own time. And this is not always easy. We are like in this 9-to-5 business. But actually, the moment you just tell someone, show up when you need, they will start to realize, okay, that meeting is important. I'm going to be there. And then they choose that themselves. Give people overview. So this is super important. You have to teach the team what other disciplines do. Because if you don't know what a QA engineer is doing, and they take a lot of time with automated tests, or if you don't get it, you might not move your Jira ticket from here to here, and they're waiting. In my case, in a project, that might stop 20 people from doing their job. Understand what others do. Understand what a business analyst is doing while they do all that work. Like creating those stories is very important. This one also, if you ask someone what they want, they feel heard. But that doesn't always fit with what you need in your team, so then guide them. So you did the thing of, okay, I'm interested in you, I know what you want, but this is what we need. So it's very easy to explain. And then people start to feel like, okay, now I start to understand why I need to take care of this part rather than the other part. And grind and glory. This is one that I learned working at an ad agency. Well, we basically didn't sleep and just went for it. And then we did like a super cool project in 5 weeks. We went live, millions of visitors, and then my creative director stepped up. I did it all the time. And actually, it's actually that junior developer that spent day and night on this silly animation that made it work. Right? So the grind is 99% and the glory is 1%. But that 1% is huge. So give people that glory. Super important. And also, similar, make people champion their subject. So if there's a debate about fetch or Axios, we saw that yesterday, just let people debate that, and then one person should own that and say, okay, we'll do fetch. So I'll tell the 100 people in my team, if there's a problem, go to this person. And they become an expert, they write documentation, they get overview, they learn, they get responsibilities. I also do this all the time, put people directly in front of the client. So you will fail or win yourself. So we've had it that we had to go to Canada for EA Games, where we would release a project. We would just put the developer that worked on a certain feature in the demo in front of their CTO. If you win in front of that guy, that's pretty cool, right? If you just did that job for 2 years. You will feel more responsible and proud and hopefully happy. Or you know, okay, this was too much because I lost a couple of times, I need to learn, I go back. It gives you overview of where you are, basically. And bottom up all the things. This is a term that's used a lot, but for me it's just like, if I'm the lead on something, I don't know everything. So if someone in your team figures out something that works really well, just let them roll with it, that's now the decision. I don't code all the time. I don't know how that certain unit test works. Let them do it. And then the more you do that, people actually start making decisions all the time. And then you can move forward faster. Okay, as a developer. So I'm guessing this is most of you guys. So the most important part is know yourself. That's very philosophical. We'll get into that. And have helicopter view. Okay, Nicolo, it's view, right, not view. I'm Dutch, and my V and the F are the same. So to a lot of people, that sounds weird. Sorry. So the most important part about knowing your own motivation is know about your autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Imagine for 1 second that Evan Yu said, okay, I'm going to make Vue.js, right? He clearly has autonomy and mastery. But what if none of you actually used Vue.js? Purpose is gone, and he would likely continue for a while and be like, fuck this, done. And then it means your motivation is done, and this can happen or it's gone. That happens in projects. Or when you're in some legacy project and you cannot actually start to understand it. If you don't have mastery of your subject, you're always a bit scared. So I'm saying these things because a lot of developers that I know, sometimes when they start to get more senior, they'll feel a little bit frustrated in their teams. They feel like they don't know why they don't like it. And if I explain those 3 things, suddenly they start to understand why they feel upset, and then it's actually very easy to fix. Usually you go to your boss and you say, I want this. And generally you get it if you understand yourself. Understand Agile. I know all of you are in some form of Agile. If you're not, good for you. But most people are. I'm sorry, it's just how it is. But actually, a lot of developers don't realize if you don't give your commitment for this sprint, the sprint will not happen. Because you are the developer. In Agile, you give commitment yes or no. If you give it, you clearly finish it, right? But if not, you are in charge of what's happening. And you are also in charge to make sure that that user story is mature enough for you to actually work on. Very important. And again, champion the subjects you like. If you like accessibility, like the talk before, that's super amazing. You don't always see people going that deep into it. But we're doing inclusive design, right? This stuff needs to happen. It's super important. So champion it, do it well, and I will make you the director of something like that. And then suddenly you can go and do a talk. That's great. Failure is iteration, right? So a lot of people are a bit scared to fail, but you're not working at hospital-grade stuff where you are coding a heart monitor. In my case, I work on websites about lipstick. Fail and release again, right? It's not that bad. And this one is also pretty big, so really make sure you take decisions based on your own intuition. And if it goes wrong, you come and ask. And the 3 years that I'm leading a pretty big team at Valtech, nobody has ever asked me. And it's always fine, because you take your own decisions, you are responsible. It's very important. And then helicopter view. I mentioned that a couple of times, so I'll go into that a little bit more. Because this word helicopter view fits in multiple situations. Right? So basically, what I mean by that is step back, and I look in front of me, and there's a whole lot of people. I'm getting an overview of what I'm dealing with. I better do a good talk now, right? Then you can use it to make strategic decisions, because if your product owner pushes for something and you don't understand why, just step back and look at his business case or her business case. Maybe when you start to understand why they chose this, you can actually challenge it. And if you just challenge without knowing, they'll just hit you back and say, shut up, I knew why I did it. But it also helps in a much smaller place, because when you start to do bug fixing, for example, if there's a whole bunch of code that influences that part of code that you think is going wrong, and you just go deep and go in and try to fix it, all these things around it influence it. So you might think you fixed it, but you probably didn't. So remove all that stuff, have overview of what you're doing, and then it's much easier to know where it goes wrong, because it comes back and it comes back. And basically now when someone is on Slack, just now, many times, like, I have this, I just type back helicopter view, and they're okay. And then usually it's fixed. And also it helps you to understand what kind of influence you have over others. Because it basically, like I said before, if you know when to move your Jira ticket to the next column, because then otherwise 20 people are blocked, if you realize this, you will do that automatically, right? If your user story is not good enough, you will not be able to code it. So just have overview and ask them, why didn't you do it this way? And then work together. Like this. This is the worst picture, I think. So, the most important part about being a team is to be one team. This sounds very like, of course we are. But actually, I work with teams across offices. I work in one team with people from New York, Denmark, Bangalore, Paris, Amsterdam. That's a pretty insane Scrum team to have. But if you are the same, if you understand the same, that really helps. And to do that, you have to go low context, and I'll get to what that means. So, first of all, this is kind of an agile thing. It's called definition of ready. So, know when you can start on something. And if you're in a small team, you can start really fast. But if you're in a huge team, you have to have some sort of consensus before you start. Because if you don't know the data structure of your backend developer and you just start mocking it and work in the front, and you do that for 2 weeks and you come back and it doesn't fit, that's not so nice, right? So know when you are ready. Again, agile teams make commitments, so you make that commitment together. So if you say yes, you will fix it, that sprint. But if you say no, nothing will happen. So they have to reevaluate or change estimates or stuff like that. And this is also a really big one. I see this all the time in those politically driven companies, is make sure that nobody influences your sprint from the outside. We have it all the time when someone comes in and says, in 2 sprints you have this third party to integrate, start some research. but you just committed to this thing that you probably couldn't commit to, or maybe just. And then suddenly this dude from the side says, do this, but he's your boss, so you might want to do it. Just don't. Understand Scrum and Agile as a team and just say, no, that's it. Because if you start to do that, 2 sprints down, your burn down rate of your points is going down because it's no longer clear what you're working on. And this one, of course, when you work with all these different cultures, is pretty big, so I'll go into that one in a bit. And yeah, drink all the drinks. Doesn't have to be alcohol, whatever you want. And now I found all the team pictures, and they're like so bad. But like, look at the photographer. How can you think about a background like that? Anyways, lightning, everything. This is good, no? I have like 20 more of those, but I didn't put them all in. So I would say, if you take anything away from this talk, this is the part where it gets interesting. I have 4 minutes left, so I'll stay on this. Because understand low context versus high context. Right now, you're in a country with the lowest context in the world. These people are the most direct ever. I am Dutch too. When I say something, that's what I mean. There's nothing else here. But when you go to Japan, they don't say what they mean, but they mean what they might say, or maybe not. Or they might say this, but that's because they say this, they mean that. And of course, those are 2 extremes. But when I live in France, so I moved 5 hours away, I needed a year to understand what they were doing, and I still don't. Because to me, that is a huge context difference. So what we have learned, go low context, which means, let me try to explain. So when I have a call with a couple of people, at the end, I always do, like, I explain, okay, this is what we discussed, these are the points to go for, right? This is like what we discussed. In my culture, you earn respect by that because you're transparent, that's what we want. But then if your other person is in Spain, they had already understood from your high context, from what you explained, that they were already doing it. So if I explain it again, they were super upset because don't you trust me? Of course I'm going to do those things. So imagine that if you have people from Spain and Brazil in the call, they have a similar culture, but their context is again completely different. So they think they work well together, but they don't. And so this is my daily work. Like, I had the other day someone who said, oh, you're very confident on the phone. It's like, oh, nice. But he actually meant that I kept on talking through him, that he didn't get to say what he wanted, and then I was leading that phone call, even though he wanted that. But he told me that a week later, having a drink, like you are confident. So if you're a Dutch person, that goes nowhere, right? That's really hard. So we're learning this over time. So what we have learned in those big programs, go low context. So don't expect people to understand that somewhere in the air, the moon is here, and then because that thing happened, you mean this. Doesn't happen that way. Different cultures give different feedback. That's very important. For example, let's go to France again. Generally, they're not super direct. But the moment you have your job interview or you have, let's say, your yearly review, they will tell you 5 things that were bad, and the things that were good, they don't mention. This is black and white, right? But this is generally what they do. And then when you go to the US, they are very direct with you, but in your yearly review, they actually only say good things and maybe one bad thing. So imagine you're from France and you go to America, you think you're a rock star. And this happens all the time. And so understand how cultures give feedback. And also, this is the one I have a lot of issues with, is how people persuade. And this goes into how you learn stuff at school. Like in France or in any Latin country, and there's a couple of others, they learn the whole proof of something. So you do mathematics or English, you learn everything and then you practice. And in the Netherlands, where I'm from, we practice and learn at the same time. So the first lesson you get is in English, even though you've never spoken English. But when I do a pitch to a client, I go that way. I tell them, this is what I found out, go that way, and then we discuss. But I had like hour-long sessions of French people asking me stuff that I thought I already explained. Because to them, I should have explained the whole thing, And then after an hour, this is my conclusion, everybody said yes. All the time. So after failing for a while, you're like, okay. And every culture is different here. And then the last one is, how do you trust? In the US especially, if you have done good things, facts, I did that well, people trust you, let's go do business. But in France, again, this is my context point, right? If I know you from high school, I will give you that job because I know I can trust you because we have an amazing relationship. So it took me years to work with L'Oreal globally that they now consider that I have a good relationship with them. And now I can be Dutch with them now. I can say, no, that doesn't work. But last year, I could definitely not do that. So it's relationship-based. So when you go for a job interview in a country that's different from you, know all those things, and once you know, it's almost like you can manipulate people and look between the lines and actually nail that interview. Okay, my time is up. So basically, go explicit and go low context, what we just discussed. Leave no room for interpretation. And this is the best slide of the deck. If you take this away, you're cool. So assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups. Or I almost say it right, but you get my drift, right? If you think about this, but it's not true because somebody melts something else because they're a different culture from you and you start working for 3 months, that's pretty shit, right? We've had it where we managed someone the French way, and then they use, let's say you manage like this, and they understand, like say, 1 degree off. And if you're in the US, it's you that's working, it's your goal, so you're just going to work and not really ask because you know what to do. If that's 1 degree off in 3 months, you go really far off, right? And in France, we just have a team, it's like, yeah, but we don't get it. Let's have a drink and wait and complain. Because that's what we expect. That's not negative, that's actually very good, because you don't have teams doing weird stuff. So we as French people telling Americans do this went really wrong many times. And the opposite way, of course, as well. They think we're lazy as fuck, because we don't do anything if we don't get it. It's very important to realize. So don't assume anything. The internet is full of awesome things, right? So, concluding. So, if you're a team leader or a tech leader, it doesn't matter what kind of leader, if you're a developer but you're senior, make sure people around you feel responsible and act responsibly yourself. If you're a developer, know yourself and have overview. And by know yourself is know why I'm annoyed or happy in a project. If you know that, you can change it or not, whatever you want. And use Agile as a tool, not as this annoying thing where I have to do all these shitty meetings. Just use it as a tool and understand it really, because it will help you. And low context, all the things. So, oh yeah, wait for the end. So this talk is actually more defined by all the anecdotes that I have, but the time is already up. Like, I could talk for hours on the crazy cultural things that we found. So come find me when this is done, or go to my YouTube channel where I do more and more videos about these kind of funny situations. They're like war stories of big companies and stuff like that. And that's it. Thank you very much.